Welcome to Into the Blue, presented by Penelope Bourbon, a weekly look behind the scenes of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Into the Blue, presented by our good friends at Penelope Bourbon. And boy, oh boy, Julie, do we have plenty to talk about after trade deadline day, an insane weekend back-to-back, and the games just keep on coming here in March. How are you? That's a long road trip.
Yeah, gotta say, I'm not feeling great right now. Just to completely start this podcast about me. No, I feel you know what, as John Cooper has sort of talked to us about, some of the Olympians have had a bit of a maybe uphill battle coming back from the Olympics after playing there, and I would consider myself one of those as well. So yes, I ever since coming back from the Olympics have been a little bit gassed. We never really had a chance to get fully any kind of time off. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle, but you know what? You get that adrenaline, get up for the game, and you just gotta give it your all when you're out there. So I'm very happy for this semi-day off, as of course we are working right now, Ben. And I'm excited to talk about the road trip, even though, of course, we'd have liked it to end better. But boy, oh boy, Benjamin, was Sunday a game for the ages.
Well, it was one of those weekends where you're like, the Lightning got to get points here, right? Out of both games, hopefully. The good news is they did stop their 4-game losing streak in Toronto on Saturday. And you're thinking like, okay, here we go. Finally some momentum going into Sunday. Sunday starts the way that it does. And like, what just happened on Sunday, right? The Lightning go down 4-1 with a shorthanded goal. They come back to score 5 unanswered goals. In the end of it, it's 5-4. Then all of a sudden it's 7-5, and they come back to tie it. The Sabres do late, 7-7, and somehow the Lightning lose in regulation. You were there for everything that happened. How do you assess what was maybe the craziest weekend of the year? I know people outside are calling it the game of the year, but really the whole weekend was like, what just happened here?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I would say the game of the year for me feels like the Stadium Series.
Has to be. It has to be.
Because everything in that game was just chef's kiss. And because obviously how Tampa played really put it over the top. I saw Steve Mayer, who is the mad scientist behind all of that, when I was at the Olympics, and I was just like, boy, oh boy, did you pull that one off? And he was like, well, Tampa had to really, the teams, we'll say, had to really show up as well. So, and we got a goalie fight. Like, if you get a goalie fight, that immediately gives you like 100 points in the ranking. So
yeah, and
I
then
thought
you
almost
the fact it was outside.
And it was
outside.
Like
you couldn't even script a game like that. Like, come on.
No, because it was like whatever it is in Fahrenheit. It was like -1 Celsius. I saw. I can't. That's the one thing my brain can't do. It can't go back.
Can't go Fahrenheit.
So yeah, can't go Fahrenheit. I was born with this thing that just said can't go Fahrenheit. And so it was so cold. You got like your heating. I had little heaters all over me, and I'm like, I'm in Florida right now.
Yeah.
It's like I left New York for this. I do not want this, but it's perfect for the game. Okay, so let's go back to Sunday. I have to say, and I included a little bit of this in one of my reports, but when I got there, one of the staff guys, who was outside the locker room, was talking to another guy. This is in Buffalo. And he goes, wow, he's like, this is the biggest game we've had here in years. And I kind of was looking at them, but I also saw on the monitor in front of them was like an NCAA March Madness promo. And I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know what level of March Madness they have coming here to KeyBank Center, but I'm like, maybe it's something to do with that. I'm thinking it's a Sunday in March. It's Buffalo and Tampa. I'm not thinking that this is literally the biggest game. I asked him, I was like, hi, sir. I was like, I've heard people talking about this game. Like, were you talking about the NCAA or are you talking about this one? He's like, oh, this game. This game is the biggest game we've ever had here in at least 14 years. And I was like, oh my. I was just like, oh my. Like this? I was like, this is the pinnacle of your last 14 years, which is great for them, but also like, holy bananas, like that's a long, long time. And so then after that, I'm getting ready to go out on the ice, like I do a pregame bench interview, and then after that, kind of like the whole, like you tape it ahead of time, of course, because it's like a little bit ahead of the broadcast. And then I'm going and I'm just kind of getting some of my notes, and I hear over the speakers, like the headsets of the guys working there, including I could hear my audio engineer, Joe. Joe doesn't have a last name on his badge, by the way, so I didn't want to just say Joe on air. And I heard him say, well, boys, like, I can't believe it's here. I've been waiting 14 years for this day to come for us to have a game like this. And someone's like, I've been waiting 35 years. And I just heard them all back and forth. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be a pretty big game. And then based on what happened in the game beforehand, which we saw a lot of sort of little bad blood from the Sabres. We saw two guys go out for Tampa, as we know, Dominic James in that game, Gage Gonsalves. And then you got into that game and it felt like I honestly felt like I was watching WWE. Like the crowd was so crazy. And
that's Buffalo, right?
Yeah, it's Buffalo. We know that. We know Bill's Mafia. We know this place is hard to live, I imagine. I've been there a lot. My family is from St. Catharines, which is just over the other side of the border in Canada. So seen a lot of Buffalo stuff, games. I empathize with the fan base. I understand it. But they were rearing to go on a Sunday at 6 p.m. on daylight saving, which is like already crazy for everyone in the world. So, well, not in the world because some people don't change their clocks. Okay, so, but then this goes, and I mean, the fights, the physicality, the start the second, 2 fights in 6 seconds. I was like, man, we're trending towards 3 and 9, which we saw at Four Nations last year. And there was, what I liked was like every guy on Tampa just stood up to these guys because it felt as though, and I am obviously on the Tampa side of this, but it just felt as though Buffalo were just kind of really, I know people call them like a mini Florida or a younger Florida, but they came out there with some juice and like they wanted to muck it up. I'm going to say that in a really nice way. They wanted to come muck it up. And I felt as though some of the things they did weren't necessarily in the spirit of the game. This is a great way of me saying that, okay? In the spirit of the game. And so then, but I like the Tampa came to play. And JJ Moser talked about at the end of the game that like, these are two teams that could see each other in the playoffs very well. And that it almost does send a message when you can show that like, hey, you want a tango? Like, all right, well, we can do that. And what I loved was, I would say when you just described the game right there, I did feel as though they were going to win, Tampa. Like when you complete a comeback like that and you do it in the way you did, and there's so many penalties, there's so many power play goals, special teams was, the biggest issue for them yesterday, but they still managed to score 7 goals. I thought 7-5. I was like, okay, I think this might be it because, well, that 5th goal from them, like the Sam Carrick goal, that was when right before, was it Sam Carrick? Was it? God, I can't even remember the score of the game when it's goals. Like just too many goals. 15. So the place was silent after Moser's goal that tied it up. Like, and that place had been rocking so hard. They were yelling, "We hate Tampa" or something. I asked my audio guy. I was like, I couldn't understand it. I was like, "What's the?" He's like, "Oh, they're yelling, 'We hate Tampa.'" I was like, "Oh, okay, great, good, glad to get that clarification." And they were all into it. Like we were saying, if that game had happened in Florida and it was 7-5, probably a lot of the arena would have left in like Sunrise. But there, they were just all getting right into it. And I do think the physicality did play a big role into that, and seeing so many guys fight and so many guys in the penalty box was really funny, seeing some of those memes out there. But I'd say it's nice to get the feel of the back of the net, even if you don't win. And I know that Brandon Hagel said kind of like the message, obviously, from the team is that these guys are the ones to go to battle with, and they all have each other's back. And this team is infinitely better, I'd say, with Corey Perry, which we'll get into in a second. But that overall, it didn't get the 2 points. But I think based on how things started and when they were down 3-0 at one point, and you kind of thought, oh, is this going to be going the way some of those games did? Like, is this going the way the Buffalo game did last game? And it didn't. And I think that that's something that you can really take. Like, hey, we rewrote the script of this Buffalo Tampa series that has evidently taken off and ignited this year, and say like, hey, like we silenced them after they came out, and it looked quite different after that point. But special teams is something I know they'll be working on.
Yeah, the special teams, right? Coop said it post game: 4 power play goals, 1 shorty. That's never a recipe to win, unfortunately. You mentioned, but like this Buffalo Sabres team, I think you have to give some credit to them, right? This is not the Sabres team of the past. They've got a lot of really talented players. And you think about this team that was really in this downward spiral at the start of the year. They fire their GM, and they've been on a heater since, right? I think they're 7-0 since the Olympic break. Like, they have just continued to stack points. So credit to them. And another person that deserves some credit, specifically here in Tampa, is GM Julien Brisebois, because as he never does, he did not stand pat at the deadline, despite him having one of the best teams in the NHL. You mentioned it just a second ago, Julie. The Lightning go out and reacquire 40-year-old forward Corey Perry before Friday's trade deadline. It cost them a 2028 second-round pick, and obviously the Kings retain 50%. And I was telling Steve before, it's like you hear about the trade, and it felt like everything, like every time we got a new detail, it looked better, right? You're like, Corey Perry for a second-round pick, and then it's, by the way, that second-round pick is 2 years from now. Like, oh, perfect. And then it's also 50% retained. And what does Corey Perry do? He comes in and contributes immediately. 2 goals in a fight in his first 2 games back. So good for him. I mean, we're talking about a guy who played 2 seasons here. He's played in the Stanley Cup final for the Lightning, and he's 3rd in NHL history for career playoff games. Like, what a get for a guy who's still producing somehow at 40 years old.
Right. You know, as you said, hats off to JBB. I can't even imagine what it was like for them heading into the trade deadline, knowing that we had heard that Dominic James was going to be out for the remainder of the season when we were in Winnipeg, and understanding they've dealt with injuries, but looking at the market and hearing what JBB talked about, and not wanting to salvage your future or kind of get housed on anything. And it was interesting. I never had even imagined Corey Perry. And he talked about the fact that, like, I apologize if it's either his no move or no trade. I believe he waived his no move clause. And it was the fact that as soon as he got the call from Julian, he was just like, well, it was an easy decision. And he did say, though, he'd never been traded in season before. So he said it was a new situation for him and his wife to navigate.
Which is crazy, like, in 21 NHL seasons. Like that,
right,
to have a first in your 21st season is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and you could tell, like, from the get-go, like, oh my gosh, in Toronto, wow, this team already has, like, just so much more of a, I mean, you have a presence, like, you have a backbone, you have someone out there who can also, like, score and who's putting all this pressure, especially like the net play. And he is really fascinating. Like, I talked to John Tavares about it. I did do a hit kind of on this because I asked John, just, when you see a guy like that who you've played with when you're younger, and he is continuously almost like, I don't want to say Benjamin Button, because that would mean he's like going back in time with his body, but he's been able to keep his body at such a high level to play at this age. And he said, it's so inspiring because, first of all, he said it shows a roadmap to being able to play as long as Perry, which is, number one, you have to love the game so much, having so much passion for it, because it is so hard to be able to get up and play those games as you get older, because you have to train so hard. And Coop kind of described in detail about the fact that his training habits, his, just off the ice, the stretching, the conditioning, everything like that. But it's also mentally, it's really like loving and embracing the travel, the staying in so many different hotel rooms, the uncertainty, of course, of like, he's been on many different teams over the last 5 years, and you have to really be okay with that too. And also the camaraderie, like, you love the room. And I know all the guys talk about that when they retire. They're like, I just miss the room, I miss the guys. And I thought it was interesting to hear from John, in that. Like, he's like, okay, it shows if you have passion like Perry, and you I guess learn how to adapt your game, like this is a roadmap for younger guys if they want to have longevity in the NHL. And so, I mean, I had such a, like, even coming back on the plane last night, I'm seeing Corey Perry and I was like, oh my gosh, like, again, I've had many Austin Powers cryogenically unfrozen moments since I've joined the Lightning for this brief period. And it's like, because I used to cover the game, I used to cover the Ducks. So I covered Corey Perry for 3 years. Back then, like 2015, 2016, 2017, when him and Ryan Getzlaf were like the twins, and Pat Maroon was not the Pat Maroon that we know now. And I look back at some of my notes from the 2022 playoffs, as one does, because Corey Perry was a part of the team then. And I had a quote from Getzlaf that had said, like, he was talking about Perry and Maroon because they were playing on the same line then, remember, in the playoffs in 2022. And he was sort of talking about the fact that, like, you know, Perry is a guy that, like, you can tell coaches want him and teams want him. That's why he has stayed in the league, because he is a guy that, like, can kind of be a little bit of a player coach, Coop said, in that way. But he can sniff out situations. He understands the environment. He knows when to turn the level up. He knows when to turn it down. Guys have talked about how he plays the game between the game, which is the one in between in your head, which Perry, of course, is very, very good at getting under other guys' skin. And so, but then I found interesting, this is a side note, but with Maroon, so when Getzlaf played with him, he was having a hard time sticking. Like, Maroon was having a hard time figuring out what his identity was. He was on that top line with them, and Getzlaf was like, it's amazing how at that point, think of 2022, he was almost out of the league when he was with the Ducks in that area. That's where Getzlaf was like, he could have been, it's almost like the movie Sliding Doors, where it's like one situation affects the rest. Like, Maroon could have been out of the league if, like, he hadn't figured out a way to play his game. Instead, you know, flipped the switch and he's won 3 Stanley Cups. And it's really quite amazing in that regard. So looking back at that, I found it interesting, and seeing Perry obviously back with the Lightning, fans are happy about that. He knows the room. The room hasn't changed much since then. He has a great relationship with Coop. Saw them talking on the bench quite a bit yesterday. And then he does like he has immediately made this team better, as we saw 2 goals. But, like, there's something about him, even just seeing him walking around. He got in late. He was playing on like 3 hours sleep. I know the adrenaline is there, but, like, that's really impressive for a guy that age. Your body's just, clock is all over the place. And then you also then go play a game the next night. I think that this is, I mean, I think it's a great move. And I'm really impressed with Perry. I mean, it really is such a great example of what you can do in this league if you do treat your body well, you love the game, and you kind of learn how to change things along the way. And I know I'm waxing poetic for quite a while here, but I think that it's great. And he did 4 interviews with me the other day in Tampa, the other day against Toronto, because it was, scrum in the morning, bench interview. I did him second intermission because I didn't do first. I wanted to get a bit more perspective on him in the game, so I interviewed McDonough because we had a bevy of goals that we could kind of look to goal scorers, and then we had to interview him in the locker room afterward. And I was joking, being like, "Man, 4 interviews in one day—that's got to be a record, like with me at least." He was like, "Yep, I think we have reached the quota of interviews that we should be doing at this point,"
Yeah.
But he was great. He's a pro's pro.
Well, and like we talked about, goals in his first 2 games, to think about a guy getting acquired in a trade, and I know he's not brand new, like you said, to this roster, but he's the 3rd player in Lightning team history to come in a trade and score in each of his first 2 games. Anthony Duclair did it in 2024. And then you have to go all the way back to 1993 in November. Chris Joseph. Like, I don't know if people understand how difficult that is to enter a new room and contribute immediately. And Corey Perry has done that. You mentioned the passion. Julien Brisebois doesn't usually go out and acquire a player on an expiring deal. We've now seen it 2 years in a row. Yanni Gordon, Corey Perry, and what do those 2 have in common? They're former Bolts this organization knows well. And I think just to close this topic, Corey Perry brings something new to this team that Julian Breezeball is really excited about.
I don't know that any player is as passionate as Corey Perry about hockey. He loves the game. He loves to compete. He loves to muck it up. He loves the challenge of doing the hard things and the rewards that come with that. So I would say it's not so much a skill set as a mindset, and that's what separates him from the other players. That's why he's still playing at a really high level at this age.
Muck it up. You said it. Julian Breezeball said it. We talked about the age. Julian touched on it. Like, this is a great addition to the room, and they're going to need it because, again, March is a crazy, crazy month. Luckily, though, you're finally home. The Lightning are finally home, and let's just say that although it is home sweet home, they're going to get greeted by some crazy tough opponents here. They got a 3-game homestand coming up. Tuesday against Columbus. They're the team just outside the playoff picture. They're currently 9th in the Eastern Conference. I mean, they've got 32 wins this year. Then they're going to play against Detroit on Thursday, the team directly behind them in the Atlantic Division standings by 3 points. And then on Saturday, they're going to play the top team in the Metro in the Carolina Hurricanes. So they are coming home, but it is going to be test after test in these 3 games.
I mean, that is seemingly what it is this season. I think that's what you want at this point. Again, I'm not I'm not a head coach. I'm not a player in the NHL. But I imagine at this point, and everyone's like, well, would you want to get this out of your system if you're having like a losing streak right now? Do you want to get it out now? If you're going to have like a tough time, yes, you want to get it out right now, I'd say. And who knows, maybe if the way they were playing last week, maybe if any of that inspired JBB, we will never know, or maybe we will know someday. But that could be just like a real blessing in disguise of how things are going. And I always think, of any situation that's difficult, there is always a gift and opportunity to learn if you do take it in that way. This week is going to be challenging. They are facing some opponents that have, quote unquote, embarrassed them in the past. We look back to the Columbus game where they're on the road, and thankfully, I was not. I was filling in for Paul Kennedy that night because I definitely wouldn't have wanted to be holding the mic at the end of the game of that, because it was just sort of like, it was a real shellacking, as a lot of the guys in Coop would say. They kind of take that one as a bit of an outlier. And so you have that one, but they've been doing really well since Rick Bowness has come in. And you have all these teams that are hungry. There's so many teams that still believe they're contending. And to be honest, contending is different from believe they are winning and making the playoffs. So there's a lot of teams that believe that they are close enough that they can't just sort of pack it in. Toronto Maple Leafs included, to be honest, which they really could have done a whole lot more for their future. But there's always that little bit of like, well, maybe we could go on a run to the very end of the season. By the way, I'm from Toronto. Some people may see my Instagram. My mom came to the game the other night. She was rooting for Toronto to lose, okay? Because people in Toronto do not want Toronto to win when you're bad. Because then what does it do? It gives you hope. And what does
Austin
hope
Matthews.
do? Yes. It's
It
and
gives you
everyone
Austin
wants
Matthews.
that whole thing to just be, after the Mitch Marner thing and all that in Florida, whatever, last year, and just rip out the studs, start from the beginning. So, don't worry. She was wearing a Leaf shirt because she doesn't have a Tampa shirt right now. But Breezer said we're going to get on that. Brian Breesman, VP Communications, he's going to get on that, get my mom a Lightning t-shirt, or maybe a long sleeve t-shirt. Breezer, if you're listening. Okay, so on that note, then you're playing Detroit, as you mentioned, right behind you. Everyone's wanting jousting for playoff positioning. I believe that's going to be a really tough game. I'm excited to see what they look like and how they play when they come into a team like Tampa. Like, let's remember this, everyone. Like, there's a lot of these teams that are trying to quote unquote unseat Tampa. As a reporter asked John Cooper ahead of the game yesterday, she said, what are the challenges in facing an upstart team who wants to unseat you? And he was like, whoa. Like, great for Buffalo that they're going to make the playoffs, and it hasn't happened in a long time. And you can say that both Buffalo and Tampa are trying to do the same thing right now. But he was like, unseat us is like two different teams over the last decade. Like, sure, maybe Coop actually had a great line where he said, have we won, who's won the more playoff rounds over the last 2 or 3 years? not one of us, but we've had more playoff wins. And he gave them a little credit like that. But it's like over the last decade, he's like, let's just say Buffalo and Tampa ain't anywhere near the idea of being unseated. And you could say the same thing with Detroit as well over the last decade. Okay, so we had that.
And they added
also,
too, right? That's Justin Falk, I believe, went to Detroit at the deadline.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong there. So
yeah,
that they obviously, again, a team that believes because they're adding pieces now, something we haven't seen in Detroit in quite a while.
Yes. And Perron and Perry, that will be they know each other as well. I like to sort of look back in some of the Dex connections because somehow these guys are still flying around the league, which is wild to see. And then I'd say there's going to be like with Carolina, that was sort of part of the beginning of, well, we gave up a lead and we had to dig ourselves out of it. And like, giving up the lead and the amount of energy that goes into trying to get back into it. Like, I think that's one thing we overlook. It's like yesterday's game, they were down 3-0, but it's like, you have to then work so hard to get back to neutral, even just get back in the game, that Tampa's working like twice as hard, more than that, to just be back in the game because of maybe something happened. Everything has been a little bit different. Yesterday we saw that with special teams, but like that is like another level that I will say I did like to see them come back last game because we haven't seen that as much of a comeback other than against Carolina. And then that last period was kind of it was a power play goal, but it was a bit stale, let's just say. So these are all games that you'll look back to in the playoffs because they will be also recent. And these are games that you could be playing these opponents. So they're all evidence. Like if you can show, and I like to do this with like your career, say like something happens to your people, something happens to you and you're like, oh my gosh, how can I possibly get through this? Like your life's work is evidence that you can get through something, right? And how you've dealt with it. So I think with Tampa, you can look back, especially with the Buffalo one, and be like, hey, regardless of the fact that like they scored one more goal than us, like we scored 7 goals. Like we know that we can beat this team. We know that we have a physical edge with them. We know that we can keep up with them. And we also know that they're a younger team, that when the playoffs happen, a younger team in the terms of like that they haven't had the playoff success that Tampa's had, or the maturity of understanding how to walk the line. Where is the line? And I do think that is going to help Tampa in the long run when it comes to playoffs against teams like Detroit and Buffalo. Carolina, of course, is a team that knows the playoffs well in all that regard. But everything in the East has been shaken up a bit since the last couple of years. As we know, Florida and Toronto not going to be in there. And those have been Tampa's 2 first-round opponents for like a very long time. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting new territory, but I'm very excited for us to be home this week because Ben, guess what? Tomorrow night's game is also.
Is that Women's Sports Night?
Yeah, good job. I didn't even have
all right. I was trying to think of which game it was. Okay, I knew it was this week, but I couldn't remember if it was game 1 or game 2.
I really appreciate that. We've actually hit a lot of women in sports nights while we've been gone. And I appreciate that because let's just say we don't see a lot of, we don't have like multiple women in sports nights. Usually it's just one night, but we got like everyone on the road. So as a woman in sports, I certainly appreciated that. So I'm excited for that game tomorrow. I know it'll be great.
Yeah, it should be a great week, and hopefully it's a great week with a couple of wins because after that 4-game skid and then a loss, the Lightning would certainly like to get the wins coming again. So we'll see. And with that, we will go on to the Blue Line segment, which, as you can imagine, after the game last night, we had some very positive and some very negative questions. I had a lot of Buffalo Sabres fans responding to my question about why the Lightning have decided to be the dirtiest team in the NHL. They were pretty upset. I had to laugh at that. But our first question,
I would look at that a little differently and answer that question back to them.
That's how it goes, right? There's a lot of emotions going after last night's game. So Kayla, though, wants to know what we think the lineup will look like when fully 100% healthy. And I did this very quickly, just looking at the roster. There were a lot more tough decisions than I expected. But I'm going Gensel, Point, Gonsalves as well in line. Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov. Gergensons, Gord, Holmberg. Perry, Paul, Bjorkstrand.
Ooh.
So again, this is hard because that lineup does not include Dominic James, and I don't like. I want Dominic James in there. I'm struggling to find the spot with the power play and the special teams, so we'll see. We'll see, because I do think Dominic James is in the lineup. I personally, just in the quick brush through the roster,
you actually you were the one that broke the news, by the way. I had to tell all the Winnipeg guys. They were like, so what does Dominic James bring to this lineup? I was like, guys, check out Ben Pierce's Instagram. It says 8 to 10 weeks. I don't think that's and then everyone
So it does
did.
say fully healthy, but yeah, it's 8 to 10 weeks with a lower body. Obviously, it was actually against the Sabres.
I know,
injury, right? So we saw him go down with that.
Oh, trust me, we thought about that. I think everyone on the Lightning remembered that as well. So I think that played a little bit into last night's game. And Gage Gonzalez too in that game got injured.
Yep. So then again, we'll see. This is if fully healthy. So hopefully the Lightning are fully healthy at some point. It hasn't happened this entire season, unfortunately. Defensive wise, Julie, I'm going Moser Radish, McDonough Chernak, Hedman, and some combination of Dastu, Lilleberg, Crozier. I don't know. I think it's probably depending on the opponent, what you want to do there. Right now, Dastu's on that second power play. So to me, it's probably Dastu to start. But depending on who you play, Lilleberg brings that physical presence. Max Crozier's been really good, and he's a right-shooting defenseman the Lightning don't have a ton of. So I do think it's matchup dependent, but that's what I would run with as of today for a healthy lineup. I hope at some point we see a fully healthy lineup. It doesn't look great right now based on how the season has gone, but that's what I would go with.
Hey, I mean, if they can get to this point without a fully healthy lineup, you just got to imagine what it's like when Nick Paul comes back. It's almost like, maybe it was Brian Engblom that said it, but it's almost like he's like a trade deadline acquisition, because he'll be able to 100%. Come back in. And he's such a utility guy, kind of really being able to play all over the place. And me and some of the media in Buffalo were talking about the fact that Paul is a guy that can do so many different things, which I truly appreciate about what he's able to do, because that is very difficult when you don't have necessarily like the defined role and you are the person. I liken it to myself. I think that is really just, if I can insert myself here, if you're able to do different things, you kind of just are thrown into. That was kind of my Olympic experience. It was like, hey, can you do like this random interview over here? Because we know you can do it, even if it's like not the thing you're like there to do. And you're like, okay, fine. So like, I feel like that's what Nick Paul's like. It's like, can you go out there and take the face off and then just like come back to the bench immediately? It's like, because you're good at face-offs, but like we would like to put someone else out there to be on that line. You're like, okay, all right, sure, I'll do it. He's the I'll figure it out guy. That's what I asked him. I'm like, would you consider yourself the I'll figure it out guy? He's like, yes. Like no matter what situation I'm put in, I'll figure it out. And so I love that about him. However, in your lineup in the future, I would put Chucky in there. I would put him in the lineup, definitely. I think he's also shown us
for sure.
A lot.
Well, and especially on that second power play, that doesn't get a ton of time, but for much of the last several weeks, it has been Dastu helping to basically pilot that second power play unit. So that's, I assume at the start it's going to be Dastu, but we'll see. Again, like Lilleberg unfortunately just took a puck to the face in practice, so he's out for 1 to 2 weeks here. He's had really tough injury luck, but he has been pretty good when he's been in the lineup. Lilleberg has. So the fact that they have to make those choices is a good sign for this team, because, and it's likely why they didn't make any ads on the blue line, right? At the deadline. People wondered if they would, but we've got, look, as we said, we mentioned there's 3 options there, and that doesn't even include Declan Carlisle, who's looked really good, right? Like they have a lot of options on the back end, and that's a good thing.
And I think also, too, I mean, like Chucky, we saw him play a couple shifts forward the other night in Winnipeg. He was supposed to play forward, but then Moser went out for a little bit. But I thought, I mean, a guy like that, when I asked him about it during the game, he's like, I just kind of told us I was going to do it. And he's like, I've never played before, but I was going to do it. And I love that mentality. I think that's like very much a Tampa thing. It's like, kind of like Nick Paul, but like, I'll do whatever it takes for this team. And this is something interesting. Media member from Buffalo asked Coop before the game, like, Charles-Edouard Dastu, is he the guy? If I asked this question to Coop, I'd get punched in the face, okay? He was like, is he the guy that wears like a beret and he's taking you to like the finest wineries when you're somewhere? He's like the cultured guy on the team because like his name, he's played all over the world. He's like the...
What's happening? This question I'm like, what? I'm just imagining me asking this question.
Yeah, so
Coop would
Ben
be
and
like,
I would
"Get
have
out."
both been punched in the face if we asked Cooper, like, is he the guy that he would be wearing the beret? Like, just those words coming out of my mouth, I'd have to punch myself in the face if that happened. And so then Coop said, like, no, well, we don't call him, like, Charles. First, they're like, there's no S on the end of, I've messed that one up too, but there's no S on the end. He's like, we call him Chucky. So imagine him as, like, Chucky from the horror movie with, like, a knife. Like, that's the type of guy. He's not the guy who's like a sommelier just because he's got a fancy name or whatnot, and just because of his background of playing all over the world. He's like, no, he's not wearing a beret. He's got a knife in his hand because, obviously imaginary, because he's just very lethal out there. And then I will ask you, like, what about the fact on that top line, what we saw was when everyone was healthy, like Kucherov, Point, and Gage Gonzalez were really clicking there. And that was also before Point got injured, and then also before Gage got injured.
You're right. I'm going to swap Cooch and Gens. I'm going to go Gonsalves, Point, Cooch, and then Hagel, Cirelli, Gensel, because now that you mention that, I do think that was a better combination.
Wow, you really didn't push back at all on that.
Well, no, because that line combo was working, and I think too, like, Gonsalves and Cooch showed quite a bit of chemistry actually playing together, and I agree. I'm going to concede that one to you. I'm also, Julie, going to concede the next question to you because you have been front and center for this stretch here. C asks, and I believe I pronounced that, it's C-I, so I don't know if it's C or Chi. I'm going to go with C. Where do you think the Bolts should put their focus leading into the rest of this season, and how do you think that could affect their play into the postseason? To me, it's eliminating the rush chances because there's been so many odd man rushes these last couple of games. Where do you think the Lightning need to focus here as they try to refine their game to what they want to play in the postseason?
Yeah, I think not giving up rush chances, which is a great point by you. So being harder on the puck defensively. Anytime you get back to your defensive structure, your defensive mindset, your defensive scheme as a forward, as a defenseman, you are going to have more success. And I think some of those rush chances you gave up a little bit, like sometimes when the D were playing up higher and you did get some offense from them in that game last night, then you sometimes get messed up going the other way. But I would say that then obviously special teams. So they've been a bit of like, all over the place. We saw yesterday. That's going to be their biggest focus. And then now I just sound like Coop. I'm like just staying healthy. Like it just, if everyone could just kind of be in bubble wrap while also giving their all, like that would be really great. So I think then it's figuring out which situations, understanding the environment of where you're in. And I think that that's something that will be so crucial while also being aware of, like every point is so pivotal right now to your playoff positioning. Cause Coop did mention a great point where he's like, and I was watching trade deadline in Canada, which, is a national event, of course. And they're saying, well, it's wide open in the East and da-da-da-da. And Coop's like, it's not wide open in the East. Look at the standings. Like, we're neck and neck. Like, everyone is jousting every day, kind of up and down. And it's been like that the entire time. So, yeah, special teams, eliminating rush chances, and really just now I'm Oliver Bjorkstrand on the bench to me yesterday, getting back to their defensive structure. We're not worried. We know what we need to do. This is a great room of guys. We've won before, and we're not worried. We're going to be able to get it done, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else but these guys in the room.
Yeah, again, special teams and rush chances. I think we're on the same page there. So hopefully they can get back to it. The good thing is those should be correctable issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can focus on how do we stop that instead of, some other issues are much harder to figure out in a month span. So hopefully they can do that.
They have the personnel, and that's like
Yes.
what you need. You have the guys that can do it. You can do it. Now you got to be able to do it.
All right, Julie, you know who else has good personnel?
Who?
Our good friends, Penelope Bourbon.
Penelope Bourbon, yep.
So today we're going with the We Did. I think we might have had that last week as well. But non-chill filtered. Again, Penelope Bourbon, I'm a big fan. So this
I got to
season's
try
Penelope
some of that
Bourbon-
Penelope
Yes.
Bourbon, by the way.
Okay, we can set you up with some, I promise.
Why don't
And
we do an episode over some Penelope Bourbon?
I like it.
Okay.
I know I
Yeah.
won't be as good of a guest with the bourbon as John Cooper. I can promise you that. I know you had an episode like that with John Cooper at one point.
Well, I
so.
got him to do improv, so I mean, if you can do that, then you'll be on the same level.
Okay, that's going to be tough. We'll see. Penelope Bourbon is a proud partner of the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's whether you're cheering at Benchmark International Arena here or raising a glass at home. Penelope does bring fans together. That's one pour, one moment, one win at a time. And you can find Penelope Bourbon at Publix or right here at Benchmark International Arena. Go Bolts. And with that, Julie, we will head to our plus minus segment, which had so many options this week. What is your plus? I'm going to make you go first.
I'd say the plus was I was really happy to see them get the win against Toronto, and that could have been a bit of a trap game. But for me, I loved, I think it's, and Brian Engblom and a couple of us talked about this, like when you can go into a building like that, and that's a building I grew up not being able to go even buy a ticket to because they were so expensive as a kid. Being able to go there, work it, see the team do well, see Corey Perry come back in. The plus is Corey Perry being such an asset to this team. And I think that is that for me is the biggest plus. And I think that another plus, even though it didn't go in the way of the Bolts, was just being able to see a game that really had everything, as Stefan from SNL would say, minus the goalie fight, but it really did have everything. And seeing online just the amount of different accounts on Instagram that have, put stuff up about it. It's like you realize sometimes we watch games and we just think like this is a game we're watching and you're kind of in your own bubble and you're like, oh wait, like the entire world also has the ability to watch this game and they all think it was crazy. And we love when what I love about hockey is I never know what's going to happen. You just never know who's going to win. You never know what kind of chaos is going to happen. And that is what we love in being able to respond to that.
Well, ESPN was calling it the game of the year. Like we talked about earlier, like there were people out there like, this is the game of the year. And again, I think Stadium Series pretty quickly.
And ESPN was at Stadium Series, like all dressed up as pirates.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the game of the year right now.
But people were entertained, and that's the biggest thing about this sport, right? You want people to be entertained, and you could not look away from your TV during that game. My plus, Julie, we're on the same page. My plus, I swear to everybody listening, this was not planned, but my plus is also Corey Perry's acquisition. Now, I was a big fan when the Oilers got him a few years ago. For those listeners who have listened to this before, you know that I grew up an Oilers fan. Pre-Connor McDavid, by the way, we're talking like Nail Yakupov years, so there was some ugly.
Oh my gosh, you just brought up Nail Yakupov! Holy smokes!
There was some ugly years in there, but like I enjoyed watching Corey Perry with the Oilers, and that was what 3 years ago when he first got there, and I was thinking like, how is this guy at 38 still contributing? Fast forward to now, the guy's scoring at 40 years old, right? He's got 30 points now, and I just think he adds a physical aspect to this team. But it's not the only thing he brings. You mentioned the great leadership, what he can bring to the room. We saw him already get in a fight in his first 2 games. I like that he's a multifaceted player that really can help this lineup up and down. Regardless of where he plays, he's going to help this team. And I just think it was a sneaky ad. Like you said, I don't think anybody had Corey Perry circled as the target for the Lightning. Even like, all of the proverbial insiders across the NHL. But as soon as it happened, everybody was like, that makes so much sense. And I just think like you have to love that. So Corey Perry is also my plus, a great ad for the Bolts. And unfortunately, we are going to transition to the negatives because my minus is losing an hour to spring forward.
On International Women's Day to boot, really. It was,
I know
it was a double whammy.
Yeah, I know it was only an hour, but it has hit me like a train. Like I wake up every day and I'm like, I feel like I'm waking up in a different country. Like I wake up and I'm like, how am I
you feel like
this
me?
tired?
Okay, great.
Yes, right. Our Olympic.
That.
Yes. But I really I know it's only an hour, but it is kicking my rear right now. So that's my minus is the spring forward because the crazy month of March, and I feel like I brought it up so many times, but I wish we could have gained an hour instead of losing an hour because it's really messing me up. I don't know if that's your minus because that would be impressive if we go 2 for 2 on the same minus. But what's your minus? Because spring forward's easily mine.
I mean, my minus is I sometimes get it mixed into like, are we springing backwards? and falling forwards. My crew really liked that I said that because it was, you could think of it that way if maybe you got a little confused. But yesterday, the game snuck up on all of us in a real big way because it had been we'd bust from Toronto to Buffalo, and then it takes a bit of time to like go to sleep and waking up. And I felt like I was at the Olympics again, where I was like, I say my legs felt like stilts, where you're just like, oh God, I cannot walk right now. I can't get out of bed. And you're like, okay. And I was trying to do this whole International Women's Day video with a whole bunch of other reporters. And then I looked at the clock. I'm like, it's 1:58. I'm like, I gotta get myself ready to go for this game.
Time.
Get my stuff on the bus by 3:00. I'm like, I got an hour. I was like, holy cow, where did the whole day go? And so I was off my game in the sense that, here, listen to this, in terms of daylight saving. By the way, if you watch Veep, you will know that it's daylight saving and daylight, not savings, because there's a whole Veep episode about that, which I love. And so I had they were like, oh, can you hear them talking to you? And I was like, no, I can't. I'm like, I'm plugged in, everything. Well, look in my ear. I have an AirPod in my ear, not my IFB, my earpiece. I was like, wow. Like, if I don't even know I have an AirPod in my ear instead of an IFB, like, we are in real trouble to start this game. So I looked at the guys working with me. By the way, my utility guy called me Brenda. He thought my name was Brenda. I was like, do I look like a Brenda? I don't even know a Brenda. Anyway, he started calling me Brenda for the rest of the game. So now I have a bit of a rapport with those guys who have already circled, by the way. April 6th is when Tampa goes back to Buffalo. That's how insane these Buffalo fans are. They all know the schedule inside and out. I mean, all of us know a lot about the schedule going forward, but these guys are like, can't wait to see what happens then. I was like, well, I certainly hope there's not a lot of the shenanigans that the Sabres are pulling, including the mascot dancing behind me in my on camera last night for like literally 1 minute. That was Sabretooth. Not a fan of that. But my minus would be, honestly, just going to places like Winnipeg where it's so cold. It is so cold, and I live there, and it sucks. It sucks how cold it is. I'm just going to say that nobody should have to go to places that cold. And thankfully, I don't think we're going to be going there anytime soon.
Well, don't you have a road trip to Canada coming up here? Aren't you guys going to Alberta the week after this?
They have like these weird things called like Chinooks or whatever, where it gets warm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, guys,
all right,
let me get it. I'll get into the weather patterns of Alberta on the next podcast.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I think
Ottawa we're going to. Trust me, not looking forward to that one either.
Okay. All right. That's fair. The good news is, Julie, you're home here in Tampa. You get the warm weather again. Our fans get the warm weather, and the Lightning are home for the next 3 games. They will start here on Tuesday. So tomorrow, we are full speed ahead. Not much time to rest in March. And with that...
No.
We will prepare for another crazy week here at home. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Into the Blue presented by Penelope Bourbon. We will keep you guys in the loop here during another crazy week, and we will talk to you soon.